We have a regime change like nobody thought was possible.
Regime change was not our goal. We never said regime change, but
we also won regime change. They said we took out the first regime 100%. That was Khomeini.
Two U.S. aircraft gone. One American pilot possibly missing inside hostile territory, and a rescue mission that could ignite a much bigger war at any moment. Sounds unreal? It's happening right now. But here's the part no one is explaining clearly. While this crisis unfolds, leadership messages coming out of Washington are raising serious questions. First, no regime change, then suddenly, regime change is back on the table. So what exactly is the real plan? And why are global leaders warning that this could open up Pandora's box the world may not be able to close? In this video, we're breaking down what just happened, what comes next, and how this could impact you more than you think. In the past 24 hours, a serious and highly sensitive situation has unfolded between the United States and Iran, centered around the region near Tehran and the strategic waters of the Strait of Hormuz, with decision-making pressure building rapidly in Washington, D.C. Reports indicate that U.S. military aircraft have been destroyed in or near Iranian-controlled airspace, but the exact cause remains unclear. Some defense sources suggest the aircraft may have been shot down by advanced Iranian air defense systems, while others point toward the possibility of mechanical failure or even electronic warfare interference that disrupted navigation and control systems mid-flight. This uncertainty is not just technical, it is politically explosive, because each explanation leads to a completely different level of escalation. If it was a direct shoot-down, it signals a deliberate act. If not, it still raises serious concerns about how vulnerable even advanced aircraft can be in contested regions. At the center of this unfolding crisis is a potential search and rescue mission, which could place U.S. forces directly inside one of the most heavily defended airspaces in the world. Military rescue operations are never simple, but in this case, the risks are multiplied. Iranian radar systems are on high alert, surface-to-air missile batteries are likely fully active, and any unidentified aircraft entering the zone could be treated as a direct threat. According to multiple international defense reports, such missions are often carried out under the cover of darkness, involving low-flying aircraft, electronic countermeasures, and constant coordination to avoid detection. Imagine the tension. Pilots navigating in near silence, warning systems lighting up with radar locks, every second carrying the risk of another strike. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and the situation could escalate far beyond a single incident. What makes this moment even more intense is the human factor behind it. This is not just about aircraft or strategy. It's about the possibility of an American pilot stranded in hostile territory. Historically, the United States has shown it is willing to take significant risks to recover its personnel, even under extreme conditions. And that raises a critical question that hangs over everything right now. How far would the U.S. go to bring one pilot home? What happens next is where the situation becomes even more dangerous. A search and rescue mission may sound routine, but in military terms, it is one of the most sensitive and escalation-prone operations any country can launch, especially in a region like this. With coordination likely involving bases near Doha and Dubai, the United States would have to move quickly, quietly, and precisely. But speed increases risk, and risk in this environment can spiral out of control. According to multiple international defense analyses, rescue missions often trigger escalation because they require direct entry into contested or hostile airspace. This is not a distant strike or a warning maneuver. This is boots-on-the-line aviation, where every movement is interpreted as intent. The first major risk comes from Iran's air defense network. Over the years, Iran has significantly upgraded its radar coverage and missile systems, creating layers of detection that can track incoming aircraft long before they are visible.
Any U.S. aircraft attempting a rescue could immediately be locked onto, forcing split-second decisions, retreat, counter, or push forward under threat. Even if the mission is purely humanitarian, the perception from the other side may be completely different. And in a tense environment like this, perception often matters more than reality. Then there's the second layer of danger: proxy forces. Groups aligned with Iran across the region could become active without direct orders, responding to the situation in real time. This introduces unpredictability. A rescue mission could suddenly face threats not just from official military defenses, but from multiple directions at once. According to regional security reports, this kind of multi-actor environment is exactly how localized incidents expand into broader conflicts. Strategically, this is where a single decision carries enormous weight. One rescue attempt, even if successful, could be interpreted as a violation or an escalation, prompting retaliation. And retaliation rarely stays contained. It spreads across borders, across alliances, and across economies. This isn't just a calculated military move anymore. It becomes a chain reaction. At its core, this moment reflects something much bigger than tactics. This isn't just military strategy, it's a high-stakes gamble with global consequences, where every action taken to save one life could potentially reshape the stability of an entire region.
As tensions rise, attention is now shifting to Washington, D.C., where recent statements have added a new layer of uncertainty to an already volatile situation. In a single address, Donald Trump appeared to send two completely different messages. At one moment, he stated clearly that the United States does not want regime change in Iran, a position typically associated with limiting conflict and avoiding long-term entanglement. But later, in the same context, he suggested that regime change could, in fact, be the objective. This contradiction is not just political language, it carries serious strategic implications. To understand why this matters, it's important to break down what regime change actually means. In simple terms, it refers to efforts aimed at removing or replacing a country's existing government, often through external pressure, military action, or internal destabilization. Historically, such efforts in places like Iraq and Libya have led to prolonged instability rather than quick resolutions. So when a leader signals both support and opposition to such a policy within a short span, it creates confusion not only among citizens but across the global stage. According to multiple international political analyses, mixed messaging during a crisis is one of the most dangerous signals a government can send. Allies rely on clarity to coordinate responses, while adversaries closely analyze every word for intent. If the message is unclear, it opens the door to miscalculation. For Iran, this inconsistency could be interpreted in multiple ways, either as hesitation, which might invite more aggressive positioning, or as unpredictability, which increases the risk of overreaction. There's also an immediate ripple effect beyond politics. Financial markets, already sensitive to geopolitical tension, react almost instantly to uncertainty. Oil prices, defense stocks, and global trade indicators can shift within minutes based on perceived direction from leadership. At the same time, allied nations may begin to question long-term strategy, especially when they are expected to align with U.S. decisions. This moment highlights a deeper issue. War is not just fought with weapons, but with messaging. Clarity can stabilize a situation, while confusion can accelerate escalation. And that brings us to a critical point worth considering. If leadership itself is not fully clear or consistent, what kind of signal does that send to a country already on high alert like Iran? While the situation intensifies, a powerful message is coming out of Paris, where Emmanuel Macron has issued a warning that goes far beyond this single conflict. His position is direct and rooted in recent history. Bombing countries because of disagreement with their governments does not lead to stability. Instead, it often creates long-term chaos. He points to past interventions in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya, where years of military action failed to produce lasting peace or strong democratic systems. These examples are not just history lessons, they are caution signals for what could happen again if similar strategies are repeated. Macron describes the current path as opening a Pandora's box, a simple but powerful idea. Once such a box is opened, it cannot be easily closed. In practical terms, this means once a conflict expands beyond its initial trigger, it begins to grow in unpredictable ways. New actors get involved, regional tensions rise, and what started as a limited incident can quickly turn into a prolonged and uncontrollable situation. According to multiple international political assessments, this is exactly how many modern conflicts have escalated, not through one major decision, but through a series of reactions that spiral outward. But Macron's message does not stop at warning against escalation. He is also introducing what he calls a third path, a strategic direction for countries that do not want to fully align with either the United States or China. This includes nations across Europe, as well as partners like Japan, India, Canada, Brazil, and Australia. The idea is to build a coalition that operates independently, reducing reliance on dominant global powers while maintaining economic and political stability. This concept reflects a deeper shift in global thinking, where countries are beginning to reassess long-standing alliances and dependencies. Strategically, this signals something much bigger than a disagreement over one conflict. It suggests that U.S. global influence, while still strong, is now being quietly questioned, even by close allies. Economic pressures, shifting trade policies, and geopolitical tensions have all contributed to this evolving perspective. For decades, the United States has been the central force shaping global order, but now there is a growing conversation about alternatives. And that brings the issue closer to home. For Rennie, America has always been the leader on the world stage, but today even its partners are asking a difficult question. Should they continue following the same path, or is it time to explore a different direction?
As this conflict unfolds, the impact is no longer limited to the battlefield. It is now sending shock waves through the global economy, reaching financial centers like New York, industrial powerhouses like Beijing, and strategic command hubs like Moscow. One of the most immediate pressure points is the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow passage through which a significant portion of the world's oil supply flows every day. Any threat to this route, whether real or perceived, can trigger rapid spikes in oil prices. According to multiple global economic reports, even the possibility of disruption in this region is enough to send markets into volatility, affecting everything from gasoline prices to airline costs and shipping expenses. But the story doesn't end with oil. There is a deeper layer of economic tension building beneath the surface. China's increasing control over critical minerals, resources essential for electronics, energy systems, and modern infrastructure, has added another dimension to global competition. As geopolitical tensions rise, supply chains become more fragile. Countries begin to reassess dependencies, industries face uncertainty, and production costs can increase. According to international trade analyses, this kind of pressure doesn't stay isolated. It spreads across sectors, from manufacturing to technology, influencing prices that everyday consumers eventually feel. At the same time, Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine continues to shape the broader geopolitical environment. The conflict has already strained energy supplies in parts of Europe and shifted global alliances. Now, with rising tensions involving Iran, these pressures are no longer separate, they're beginning to overlap. Moscow's strategic positioning in this environment adds another layer of complexity as global powers navigate both cooperation and competition under increasing uncertainty. What makes this moment truly significant is how interconnected everything has become. This is no longer just about one region or one conflict. It is part of a much larger shift, a gradual reshaping of global power dynamics. Economic influence, resource control, and military positioning are all moving pieces in a larger puzzle. And while these developments may seem distant, their effects are often felt closer to home than expected. Changes in fuel prices, fluctuations in job markets, rising costs of goods, these are all connected to the same underlying tensions. The bigger question now is not just about what happens next in the conflict, but how deeply it could reshape everyday life across the world.
At this stage, the biggest question is no longer just about what has happened. It's about what comes next. Are we looking at a contained crisis or the early signs of a much larger war? Based on current geopolitical patterns and military behavior, there are three realistic scenarios that could unfold, each triggered by very specific actions and reactions. The first is limited retaliation, a controlled conflict where both sides respond carefully without crossing certain red lines. In this scenario, the United States might conduct targeted strikes or defensive operations, while Iran responds in a measured way to avoid full-scale escalation. According to multiple international defense analyses, this is often the preferred path in high-tension situations because it allows both sides to show strength without committing to a prolonged war. However, this balance is extremely fragile. One mistake, one misinterpreted signal, and it can quickly collapse. The second scenario involves escalation through proxies. Instead of direct confrontation, Iran could rely on allied groups in the region to apply pressure on U.S. interests, whether through attacks on bases, shipping routes, or strategic assets. This creates a layer of separation, making it harder to attribute actions directly while still increasing tension. According to regional security reports, this kind of indirect conflict is already a common strategy in the Middle East, allowing countries to engage without officially declaring war. The danger here is unpredictability. Multiple actors with different motivations can act independently, making the situation harder to control and easier to escalate unintentionally. The third and most serious scenario is direct confrontation between the United States and Iran. This would involve open military engagement, airstrikes, naval clashes, and possibly wider regional involvement. Such a situation could be triggered by a failed rescue mission, a direct attack on military assets, or a chain reaction from escalating proxy conflicts. According to global military assessments, once direct engagement begins, it becomes significantly harder to contain, as both sides are pushed to respond with greater force to maintain strategic credibility. What makes all of this particularly concerning is how these scenarios are not isolated. They can evolve from one into another. A limited strike can lead to proxy retaliation, which can then spiral into direct conflict. History shows that wars rarely begin with a single massive decision. Instead, they grow step by step, fueled by reactions, miscalculations, and rising pressure. And moments like this, uncertain, tense, and rapidly changing, are often where that process begins.
For the average American, this situation may feel distant, something happening far away and places that don't directly affect daily life. But in today's interconnected world, conflicts like this rarely stay contained. The effects travel quickly, often showing up in ways that are easy to overlook at first. One of the most immediate connections is fuel. When tensions rise around critical routes like the Strait of Hormuz, global oil markets react almost instantly. According to multiple international economic reports, even the threat of disruption can push prices higher. That increase doesn't stay on paper. It shows up at gas stations, in transportation costs, and eventually in the price of everyday goods. Beyond fuel, there's a broader sense of instability that begins to take shape. Markets respond to uncertainty, businesses delay decisions, and global trade flows become less predictable. This can affect job security, investment confidence, and even retirement savings for millions of people. At the same time, rising geopolitical tension often leads to increased defense spending, which can shift national priorities and budgets in ways that indirectly impact public services and economic planning. There's also the issue of security. When conflicts expand or intensify, the risk of cyber threats, regional instability, and unexpected global incidents increases. According to international security assessments, modern conflicts are no longer limited to physical battlefields. They extend into digital infrastructure, financial systems, and critical supply networks. This means the ripple effects can be felt in ways that go beyond what we traditionally associate with war. What makes this moment particularly significant is how quickly these changes can happen. A single escalation can trigger a chain reaction, influencing decisions across governments, industries, and communities. And while the headlines may focus on military developments, the long-term impact is often measured in everyday experiences: how much you pay for fuel, how stable your job feels, how secure the global environment seems. So while it may seem like a distant geopolitical issue, the reality is much closer to home. The bigger question now becomes not just what leaders will do next, but how those decisions will shape the lives of ordinary people in the days and weeks ahead. As we watch these events unfold, it's impossible not to feel the weight of what's at stake, not just for leaders and soldiers, but for ordinary people whose lives ripple through every decision made in faraway capitals. Families worried about loved ones, workers watching prices rise, communities sensing uncertainty. These are the real human stories behind the headlines. History reminds us that in times like this, clarity, caution, and perspective matter more than ever. We want to hear from you. What do you think should happen next? Could diplomacy still prevent escalation, or is a more aggressive approach inevitable? Share your thoughts in the comments, because your perspective adds to this conversation. If you missed our previous deep dive analysis on global tensions, make sure to check it out. You'll get context that helps make sense of today's headlines. And if you value content like this, consider supporting us by subscribing. It's just one click, but it keeps us bringing you the latest, most detailed breakdowns without fluff. In moments like these, staying informed isn't optional, it's essential.